The fuse has been lit. White House and Pentagon sources confirmed today, February 19th, that the U.S. military is fully positioned and ready to strike Iran as early as this weekend. With the Geneva talks hitting a wall and the USS Gerald R. Ford finally entering the theater, the 72-hour countdown has officially begun. President Trump holds the final go order in his hands, weighing a surgical strike against a regime that he warns is running out of time. Today, we look at the weekend protocol and the specific targets now appearing on the Navy's digital kill web. The threat, the weekend window. Let's establish the timeline and the tactical picture, because both are critical to understanding why this weekend, specifically February 21st through 23rd, has become the operational window. As of this morning, February 19th, the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group has officially entered the theater. The Ford departed Norfolk, Virginia on January 28th. It transited the Atlantic, passed through the Suez Canal on February 9th, and has spent the past 10 days conducting what the Navy described as pre-positioning operations in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. As of 0600 hours Eastern Time today, the Ford crossed into the Gulf of Oman and is now operating within strike range of Iranian territory. The USS Abraham Lincoln, which has been on station in the North Arabian Sea since early February, is now converging with the Ford. Together, these two carrier strike groups represent the most concentrated American naval combat power in the region since Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. Combined air wing, approximately 140 aircraft. Combined Tomahawk missile capacity, over 300 cruise missiles. Combined area denial capability, enough to suppress or eliminate any air defense network currently operated by Iran. This convergence is not accidental. This is the force package that Phase 2 requires. The ready-to-strike status, the phrase that has now been confirmed by multiple defense officials, speaking to Reuters, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal, was formally activated following the collapse of the Geneva talks on February 17th. That was the trigger. Iran's refusal to provide a zero enrichment guarantee, their rejection of the U.S. framework, and their insistence on a freeze-for-freeze proposal that would allow them to keep their existing stockpiles, all of that combined to move the U.S. military posture from sustained readiness to active launch preparation. But why this weekend specifically? There are two factors. One is tactical, one is geopolitical. Tactical factor, carrier convergence. The Ford's entry into the Gulf of Oman creates a tactical window that will not remain open indefinitely. Carrier operations in confined waters, particularly waters as heavily surveilled as the Persian Gulf approaches, are inherently high risk. The longer the carriers remain on station, the more time Iran has to position assets, refine targeting data, and prepare potential strike options of their own. The optimal strike window, according to naval doctrine, is the first 48 to 72 hours after the carriers achieve full operational positioning. That is when the element of surprise is strongest. That is when Iran's defensive posture has not yet fully adapted to the presence of the strike groups. That is when the tactical advantage belongs to the attacker. The Ford achieved full positioning this morning. The 72-hour window opens now. Geopolitical factor, the Winter Olympics. Closing ceremony. The second factor is more subtle but historically significant. The 2026 Winter Olympics, hosted in Milan Cortina, Italy, will conclude with a closing ceremony on Sunday, February 23rd. For the past week, global media attention has been focused on Olympic coverage, medal counts, athlete stories, ceremonies. It is a geopolitical dead zone, a moment when the international community is collectively distracted by spectacle. This is not a new pattern. Military actions have historically been timed to coincide with major international events that dominate news cycles and create windows of reduced scrutiny. The 2008 Russian invasion of Georgia began during the Beijing Olympics opening ceremony. The 2014 annexation of Crimea occurred immediately after the Sochi Olympics. The pattern is consistent. Use the distraction of a global event to reduce the immediate international reaction time to military action. If the U.S. strikes Iran this weekend, particularly if the strike occurs on Saturday night or Sunday morning Eastern Time, which would be early Monday morning in Tehran, the initial global reaction will be muted by Olympic coverage. By the time the full international community refocuses on the Middle East, the strike will be over, the damage will be done, and the narrative will shift from "should this happen" to "what happens next?" This is the weekend window, tactically optimal, geopolitically opportune, and closing fast. Urgent. The strike window is not indefinite. If action does not occur by Monday, February 24th, the tactical and geopolitical factors that make this weekend optimal will no longer apply. The next window may not open for weeks. The intelligence. Why this weekend? The Situation Room briefing. On Wednesday night, February 18th, President Trump convened a situation room briefing that lasted over 3 hours. Present, according to sources who spoke to the Washington Post and Politico on background, were Secretary of Defense, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, National Security Advisor, CIA Director, Director of National Intelligence, Vice President J.D. Vance, and a small number of senior military commanders participating via secure video link from U.S. Central Command in Tampa, Florida. The purpose of the briefing was to finalize the decision timeline for Phase 2, not to decide whether to strike. That decision, by all accounts, has already been made contingent on Iran's refusal to meet U.S. terms. The purpose was to decide when. What emerged from that 3-hour session was the weekend protocol, the operational plan for a strike to occur within the 72-hour window beginning February 21st. But the briefing also revealed something else, something that has not been widely reported in the press, but that multiple intelligence sources have now confirmed: the sheer scale of the military surge that has occurred over the past 10 days. The intelligence gap. 170 cargo planes, 85 fuel tankers. While Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was speaking to journalists in Geneva about guiding principles and constructive dialogue, U.S. intelligence was tracking something very different. Military air transport activity in Panoi Yamada is a classification system used by intelligence agencies to monitor large-scale movements of military cargo and personnel. It tracks C-17 Globemasters, C-5 Galaxies, KC-46 Pegasus tankers, and other heavy-lift aircraft moving through military airlift corridors. Over the 10-day period from February 9th to February 18th, MADA tracking systems recorded over 170 cargo aircraft and 85 aerial refueling tankers arriving at U.S. military installations across the Middle East. That is not normal peacetime activity. That is not routine rotation. That is a surge. The destinations: Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE, Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, and Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. The cargo: precision-guided munitions, electronic warfare pods, spare parts for sustained, high-tempo operations, and, according to sources familiar with the manifest data, additional Tomahawk cruise missiles to supplement the existing stockpiles aboard the carrier strike groups. This is what the intelligence community calls pre-positioning. You do not move 170 cargo planes worth of ordnance into theater unless you are preparing to use it, and you do not do it quietly, without announcing it, unless you are trying to minimize the window between preparation and execution. Iran knows this surge is happening. They have satellites, they have spotters at civilian airports near U.S. bases, they know the planes are landing, but there is a difference between knowing that something is happening and knowing when it will be used. That gap, the uncertainty about timing, is what the U.S. is exploiting. On Wednesday evening, just hours before the Situation Room briefing, Vice President J.D. Vance appeared on Fox News for a pre-scheduled interview that took on new significance given the timing. When asked directly about the status of negotiations with Iran, Vance's response was carefully worded but unambiguous. Iran is not yet willing to acknowledge the president's red lines. We have been extraordinarily clear about what is required: total denuclearization, full transparency, verifiable compliance. Iran has refused every one of those terms. At some point, you stop talking and you start acting. That phrase, not yet willing to acknowledge, is significant. It leaves the door open, theoretically, for Iran to change their position at the last moment, but it also signals that the administration does not expect that to happen. The not yet is diplomatic courtesy. The substance of the message is they have refused, and we are moving forward accordingly. Vance's final sentence, you stop talking and you start acting, was interpreted by analysts as the clearest public signal yet that the decision to move to kinetic action has been made. The talking has stopped. The acting is about to begin. The Situation Room. Decision: go, no go. Authority. According to sources briefed on the Wednesday night session, the president was presented with 3 options. Option 1, delay, continue maximum pressure sanctions, maintain carrier presence, give Iran another 2 weeks to respond to the U.S. framework. This option was reportedly rejected almost immediately. The assessment is that Iran is using time to fortify their program, not to reconsider their position. Option 2, limited strike. Target only the most critical nuclear facilities, Natanz, Fordow, with a strike package similar in scope to Operation Midnight Hammer. Leave other military infrastructure intact. This is the surgical option. It minimizes escalation risk, but also leaves significant Iranian military capability in place. Option 3, comprehensive strike. Target the nuclear facilities and the broader military infrastructure that supports them, IRGC command nodes, ballistic missile sites, air defense networks, naval bases. This is Phase 2 in its full form. It eliminates not just the nuclear program, but the military capacity to rebuild it quickly. The decision, according to sources, was option 3, comprehensive, but with one critical caveat: The President retains final go, no-go authority up until the moment the first aircraft cross into Iranian airspace. The military is ready. The plan is approved. But the final order? The actual execution command has not yet been given. That order could come at any time over the next 72 hours. The tech breakdown, the mid-March versus immediate capability. There is an important distinction to make between two types of military readiness, because they have been conflated in some press reporting, and understanding the difference is critical to understanding what is about to happen. Sustained operations capability refers to the ability to conduct a prolonged, high-intensity air campaign lasting weeks or months. This requires a massive logistical infrastructure, multiple carrier rotations, land-based airfields operating at surge capacity, supply chains for munitions and spare parts, medical facilities for potential casualties, and diplomatic agreements with regional partners for basing and overflight rights. Building sustained operations capability takes time. The Pentagon has been working toward this since mid-January, and by most estimates, full sustained capability will not be achieved until mid-March. Surgical weekend strike capability is different. It refers to the ability to conduct a concentrated time-limited operation, 24 to 72 hours, using prepositioned assets already in theater. This does not require the full logistics tale of sustained operations. It requires enough strike aircraft, enough munitions, enough tanker support to hit a defined target list in a compressed time frame and then pull back. This capability exists now. This is what is ready this weekend. The weekend protocol is not designed to occupy Iran or to sustain a prolonged campaign. It is designed to eliminate Iran's nuclear program and degrade their military capacity to respond in a single decisive operation. That is what the current force package can do. The E-3 Sentry, AWACS, Surge, 6, Eyes in the Sky. One of the most significant indicators of imminent action is the movement of E-3 Sentry aircraft, commonly known as AWACS, for Airborne Warning and Control System. AWACS aircraft are force multipliers. They're flying command centers. The radar system on top of the aircraft can track hundreds of airborne and surface targets simultaneously out to a range of 250 nautical miles. They coordinate strike packages, manage air refueling operations, provide early warning of enemy aircraft, and serve as the communication hub for complex multi-aircraft missions. In normal peacetime operations, the U.S. maintains 2 or 3 AWACS aircraft in the Middle East theater at any given time. They rotate through on routine deployments, supporting ongoing operations in Iraq, Syria, and anti-ISIS missions. As of this week, there are 6. 2 AWACS aircraft were pulled from Kadena Air Base in Japan. 2 were pulled from Ramstein Air Base in Germany. They have all been repositioned to Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. Add those to the 2 already in theater, and you have 6. The exact number required, according to Air Force doctrine, to coordinate a saturation strike against a heavily defended target. The AWACS surge is one of the most reliable indicators of imminent large-scale air operations. You do not move these aircraft, expensive, specialized, limited in number, unless you are about to use them. And their positioning around the approaches to Iran suggests that their role will be to manage the strike package as it enters Iranian airspace, suppress or jam Iranian air defense radar, and coordinate the sequencing of attacks across multiple target sites simultaneously. The weaponry, SM-6, Block IB and Tomahawk, Block Phi. Let's talk about the 2 primary weapon systems that will be used in the opening phase of any strike this weekend. The SM-6 Block IB, Standard Missile 6, Block 1B variant, is one of the most versatile weapons in the U.S. Navy's inventory. It was originally designed as an air defense interceptor, capable of shooting down enemy aircraft and ballistic missiles. But the Block IB upgrade added a surface strike capability. It can now be used to attack ground targets, specifically radar installations, air defense batteries, and command centers. The SM-6 travels at Mach 3.5. It has a range exceeding 240 nautical miles. It can be launched from the Aegis destroyers and cruisers that escort the carrier strike groups. And critically, it can be launched in volleys, multiple missiles simultaneously, to overwhelm point defenses. The role of the SM-6 in the weekend protocol is to suppress Iran's integrated air defense system in the first 2 minutes of the operation. Before the strike aircraft cross into Iranian airspace, before the Tomahawks reach their targets, the SM-6 missiles will be hitting S-400 radar sites, command bunkers, and communication nodes. The goal is to blind the system before the main strike package arrives. The Tomahawk Block 5 is the land attack cruise missile that has been the backbone of U.S. long-range strike capability since the 1991 Gulf War. The Block 5 variant, introduced in 2021, has improved range, over 1,000 nautical miles, enhanced targeting, and the ability to receive in-flight retargeting commands if intelligence updates occur during the mission. The Ford and Lincoln strike groups are estimated to carry over 300 Tomahawk missiles combined. That is enough to hit every high-value target on the Phase 2 target list: nuclear facilities, missile sites, command centers, naval bases, with redundancy. Some targets will receive multiple tomahawks to ensure destruction. The sequencing matters. SM-6 strikes occur first. They eliminate the air defenses. Tomahawks follow immediately after. They hit the fixed infrastructure targets. Then, with the air defenses degraded and the high-value targets already struck, the manned aircraft, the F-35Cs, the FA-18EF Super Hornets, and the B-21 Raiders from Diego Garcia enter the airspace to conduct battle damage assessment, hit any remaining targets, and ensure that nothing critical was missed. This is not a single weapon. This is a layered, timed sequence designed to achieve total air superiority in the first 120 seconds of the operation. Electronic suppression. Blinding the S-400. In 120 seconds. The final piece of the operational picture is the electronic warfare component. Iran's S-400 air defense system is formidable. It can track dozens of targets simultaneously, engage aircraft at ranges exceeding 400 kilometers, and, under ideal conditions, present a serious threat to even stealth aircraft if they are detected early enough. The operative phrase is under ideal conditions. The U.S. plan is to ensure that conditions are anything but ideal. EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft will be operating from both carrier flight decks. Their mission is to jam the S-400 radar systems across multiple frequency bands simultaneously, creating enough electronic noise that the radar operators cannot distinguish between real targets and false returns. At the same time, the F-35C squadrons, which carry the AN/ASQ-239 electronic warfare suite, will be generating active jamming signals while approaching their targets. The F-35's role is not just to be stealthy, it is to actively degrade the enemy's ability to see anything at all. The goal is to achieve 120 seconds of total electronic suppression, 2 minutes during which Iran's air defense network is functionally blind. By the time the jamming lifts and the operators attempt to reacquire targets, the radars themselves are already destroyed. This is not a fair fight. It is not designed to be. It is designed to be over before Iran fully understands that it has started. I-info. The electronic warfare tactics described here are based on publicly available doctrine and capabilities. The specific frequencies, jamming patterns, and coordination protocols remain classified. The geopolitical so what, the final ultimatum, and the regime change. Questioned. At today's White House press briefing, February 19th, early afternoon, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked directly whether the administration is preparing for military action against Iran. Her response was carefully calibrated but unambiguous. Iran would be very wise to make a deal. The president has made clear what is required. We are not going to negotiate against ourselves. The ball is in Tehran's court. But I will say this. The window for diplomacy is closing rapidly. Caroline Leavitt, White House press briefing, Feb 19, 2026. That phrase, very wise to make a deal, is a final ultimatum. It is not an opening negotiating position. It is a last warning before action. The phrase, the window for diplomacy is closing rapidly, is even more explicit. It signals that the administration has set an internal deadline, and that deadline is imminent. When press secretaries start talking about closing windows, it usually means the window has already closed internally and the public messaging is catching up. Regime change or negotiated surrender. If the strike happens this weekend, the immediate question becomes, what is the endgame? There are two schools of thought within the foreign policy community, and they produce dramatically different predictions about what follows a successful Phase 2 operation. The regime change scenario holds that a comprehensive military strike, one that destroys not just the nuclear program but the broader military infrastructure of the IRGC, will destabilize the Iranian regime to the point of collapse. The economic pressure is already severe. Domestic unrest is already simmering. A military humiliation on this scale could be the final blow that breaks the regime's grip on power. In this scenario, the strike is not just a tactical operation. It is the opening move in a process that leads eventually to the fall of the Islamic Republic. The negotiated surrender scenario holds that Iran's leadership, faced with the destruction of their military capacity and the continued economic strangulation, will accept terms that they would never have accepted before the strike. This is the logic behind Trump's New Deal framework. Hit them hard enough that they have no choice but to sign. In this scenario, the strike is the leverage that produces the agreement. Tehran comes back to the table within days or weeks, accepts the zero baseline framework, and the conflict ends not with regime change, but with Iranian capitulation. Which scenario is correct? The honest answer is that no one knows. Not the Pentagon, not the CIA, not the White House. Both are plausible. Both have historical precedents. And the outcome will depend on factors. Iranian domestic politics, the scale of the strike, the effectiveness of the follow-up pressure, that cannot be predicted with certainty before the operation begins. What is clear is that the administration believes one of these two outcomes is achievable. They would not be proceeding otherwise. The risk: Khamenei's fatal threat to sink the Ford. There is one scenario that changes everything if Iran successfully strikes the USS Gerald R. Ford. Khamenei issued that threat explicitly on February 17th. He claimed Iran possesses the capability to sink a U.S. carrier. Whether that claim is accurate, whether Iran's saturation attack doctrine, their Fatah-2 hypersonic missiles, their drone swarms can actually penetrate the Ford's layered defenses, is an open question. But the mere possibility changes the calculus on proportional response. If Iran strikes the Ford, even if the strike does not sink the ship but causes significant casualties, the U.S. response will escalate beyond Phase 2. At that point, this is no longer a surgical strike to eliminate a nuclear program. This is a war, and wars, once started, are extraordinarily difficult to control. This is the nightmare scenario that Pentagon planners are gaming out, not the scenario where everything goes according to plan. The scenario where Iran's threat is real, where the carriers are vulnerable, and where a single successful Iranian strike transforms a limited operation into a regional conflagration. The Ford's presence in the Gulf is both a show of strength and a vulnerability. It is the ultimate deterrent, the symbol of American power. But symbols can be destroyed. And if this one is, the consequences are incalculable. Urgent. The carriers are operating under the assumption that Iran will attempt a strike if they detect imminent U.S. action. Defensive readiness is at the highest level, but the only defense that is 100% effective is not being there at all, and that option is no longer available. Here is the board. 2 items to watch over the next 48 hours. Watch item 1, Truth Social. The final warning post. President Trump has a consistent pattern when it comes to military action. He signals, not through official channels, not through Pentagon press releases, through his personal social media. Before Operation Midnight Hammer in June 2025, Trump posted on Truth Social, "Iran has been warned. What comes next is their choice." The post came 36 hours before the strikes. If a similar post appears on Truth Social over the next 48 hours, particularly if it includes language about final warnings, closing windows, or time running out, that is the clearest indicator you will get that the decision has moved from contingent to final. Watch Truth Social. If Trump posts a warning, the strikes will follow within 24 to 48 hours. Watch item 2, the Shadow Fleet. Tanker movement in the Strait. Iran's Shadow Fleet, the aging tankers and reflagged vessels that Iran uses to export oil in defiance of sanctions, operates continuously through the Strait of Hormuz. On any given day, there are a dozen or more Iranian-flagged or Iranian-controlled tankers moving through the strait. But if Iran's leadership believes a strike is imminent, one of the first things they will do is stop the tankers. They will halt exports. They will keep the ships in port or anchor them in safe waters. The reason is simple. If the strait becomes a war zone, those tankers become targets or collateral damage. If satellite tracking or maritime reporting services show that Iranian tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has dropped to near zero overnight, if the fleet goes dark, that is a signal that Tehran believes the strike is coming and is preparing for it. Watch the tanker data. If movement stops tonight or tomorrow, they are bracing for impact. The military is ready. That is not speculation. That is not analysis. That is confirmed fact, reported by multiple defense officials to multiple news organizations, corroborated by satellite imagery of the cargo surge, by the positioning of the carrier strike groups, by the movement of AWACS aircraft, by the statements of senior administration officials. The carriers are in place. The strike aircraft are armed and staged. The target list is finalized. The coordination with allied forces, Israel, likely the UK, possibly others, is complete. The AWACS aircraft are orbiting. The SM-6 missiles are loaded in the vertical launch systems of the Aegis destroyers. The Tomahawks are programmed with their GPS coordinates. The electronic warfare plans are set. Everything is ready. The only thing that has not happened yet is the final go order from the president. And that order could come at any moment over the next 72 hours. This is not a drill. This is not posturing. This is not another round of maximum pressure designed to bring Iran back to the negotiating table. The negotiating table no longer exists. The Geneva talks collapsed. Iran refused the U.S. framework. The diplomatic process has been exhausted. What remains is Phase 2. The operational plan that was developed as a contingency, that was refined over months of intelligence collection and targeting analysis, that was briefed to the president on Wednesday night, and that was given final conditional approval, with the caveat that Trump retains go, no-go authority until the moment of execution. By Monday morning, February 24th, the map of the Middle East could look very different. Iran's nuclear facilities could be reduced to rubble. Their air defense network could be destroyed. Their command and control infrastructure could be offline. Their ballistic missile sites could be cratered. The IRGC's capacity to project power through Hezbollah, through the Houthis, through proxy militias across Iraq and Syria, could be severely degraded or eliminated. Or, and this is the scenario that keeps Pentagon planners awake, Iran could successfully strike back. The fort could be hit. American casualties could be significant. The limited surgical operation could escalate into a broader regional war that no one wanted and no one can fully control. Both scenarios are possible. Both are being planned for. And which one occurs will be determined by decisions made in the next 48 hours. Decisions made in the Oval Office, decisions made in the Situation Room, and decisions made in the command centers aboard the USS Gerald R. Ford and USS Abraham Lincoln as they prepare to launch the largest concentrated strike operation since Operation Desert Storm. The countdown is running, the window is open, and the world is about to find out whether diplomacy's failure leads to deterrence's success or to something far more dangerous.